Still the 15th.
Great. Maybe I'll just go ahead, I think. And Trish will hop on shortly.
August 18th was the last meeting.
That seems okay. All right, so I'm calling to order the September 15th BOSAC. Duke, if you want to do roll call.
Matt Powers.
Here.
David Rossi.
Here.
Nikki LaRochelle. Chris Tennell.
Here.
Bobby Zanka.
Here.
Jay Beckerman. And Kristen Joyce is absent, hoping to attend virtually.
Okay, approval of minutes. Anyone have any last minute edits? Okay. Anyone want to?
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks. Great. Okay. All right. And agenda, any changes there? Good. Okay. Public comment? Non-agenda related? No. Okay. All right. We will go to staff summary.
Okay, one thing that I just wanted to bring up that didn't make the staff summary was that we, Alex and Tony and Joel and Mark and Chris and I got to do a tour of the Nutrifix treatment of the Reed Canary grass in the Upper Cucumber Gulch. And it was great, really informative. The guy we've hired, Andy Herb, was great to kind of explain to us the different methods that he's trying. You know, it's a liquid or granular application and certain dosages and some controls. And it's really nice to see now because you can see clearly what's working and where the Reed Canary grass is yellowing and shriveling. It wouldn't make sense for a BOSAC meeting visit in October because by then all the grasses will have turned yellow. So if any of you would like to see that, we can do a little private tour, and if it's enough people, we'll make a public meeting notice, but happy to show any of you guys that might be interested what's going on there. The big picture plan is he'd like to see how things regenerate in the spring, try some of the same treatments, maybe something different, and then make a long-term treatment plan this time next year, but very promising results with the early tests.
It's hard not to trust a plant guy who has herb as a last name. Really?
I will say if it's one of us guiding the tour, it'll be a lot less informative, but we'll do our best.
Okay. Any staff summary questions? I was curious, Duke, on the strap where it said there was some feedback about, I think it was concerns, restrictions on local access. How is the Forest Service receiving that type of feedback? Do they seem receptive? Are they?
I think so. We have a meeting Wednesday to review all the comments. It'll be us and the Forest Service and the county.
Okay.
And talk about how they can be addressed and what changes could be considered. But that's been one of the most strongest themes is local access, either free or discounted, or you maybe have read some of the comments. But so currently they have the library passes for Quandary. Each library branch has 2 passes, and you can free parking pass, and you can reserve them for a week at a time. But that doesn't address people that might live nearby and want to go there at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. So trying to figure out what could be maybe some accommodations that could be made for that.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
And one of the comments I noticed was about connecting Borough actually to the trailhead, because it connects to the road, but not the trailhead.
That's right.
And that seemed like a pretty worthwhile change.
Yep. So the way this works is we'll help the Forest Service review all these comments, and then it's like, okay, well, we need to either do what they suggested or come up with a good reason why not to. So kind of analyze all those, and then, but there'll be responses to all the comments, which will be in the public forum too.
And will we get notice of when when those responses will be?
Yeah, we'll be sure to share any updates.
Good, thanks.
I hoped everyone watched Ella and Alex's video.
Yes.
Video. Yeah, that's great. Okay, anything else on this? All right, so we will go to our discussion, which is Ella, you are up.
Yep. We'll give her control here. This is Ella's 5th season as a naturalist, and it's great. We'll start at the beginning.
Thank you.
And also, I just want to call out Shannon Keeney was with us. She was our other naturalist this summer and also did a great job. They're a great team. She is taking a job with the rec department, so she's unable to make it tonight, but she deserves credit for a lot of the work that they accomplished this summer as well.
Right.
Talking into it. Sound check.
Sound good.
All right. Yeah, my name is Ella, and I have been one of the town's naturalists for 5 seasons now. It's been a great joy of mine. As naturalists, we promote conservation and foster stewardship by inspiring people through environmental education programs such as talks, guided hikes, and other engaging programming. Naturalists, we also conduct wildlife and visitor use monitoring in Cucumber Gulch, as well as other town open spaces. And our season is generally from the end of April or beginning of May through mid-October. There's Shannon. She's also a wonderful naturalist, like Duke said. I've broken this report down into 3 sections, the first of which is visitor use monitoring, which we primarily conduct just in Cucumber Gulch Preserve during the closure. We also collect on a monthly basis the TrafX trail counters for all of the places that we have trail counters. This year, during the annual Cucumber Gulch Preserve closure, we had 76 people enter the preserve and about 10 dogs. 87% of those trail users were hikers and 13% were mountain bikers. 53% of those trail users entered the preserve from lower entrances and 47 from Peaks Trailhead. These numbers are pretty consistent with last year's numbers. We have not had really much of an increase or decrease in visitation during closure. It's still pretty low compared to numbers of people on the trails when it's open. Just maybe a couple more dogs. On the next section, we have wildlife monitoring. This is conducted in Cucumber Gulch Preserve all year long in person for beavers and via trail camera for all other species. Occasionally, we also assist in collecting data from Summit County trail cameras. Starting out with monitoring for beavers, we do that in person twice a month in May and June. We take a break from that in July and August, and we resume in-person monitoring in September through mid-October. The shoulder seasons are the most important time to observe beavers and what they're doing. And we also monitor for them on the trail camera. This up here is a shot of a beaver from the Josie's Cabin Pond. And this year we have been seeing more beavers. Yay! We've seen beaver and muskrat at almost every beaver observation in person. And we hope to continue seeing them through this month and October when we do their lodge survey. Here are some of my favorite pictures observed on trail cameras for wildlife monitoring. Starting in the top left, we have a black bear. Top right, a pine marten. Bottom right, a porcupine, and bottom left, a great blue heron, and in the middle, a female moose and her calf. This just kind of shows the biodiversity and some of the unique species we catch on camera. And this is kind of comparing the wildlife on the trail camera and people. So as you can see, there were a few people on the trail during closure in May and June, but nowhere near the amount of people who are actually waiting until the preserve does open, which is around 6,000 people per month. And even though wildlife that's on the camera, that's on the trail, does decrease a little bit, when people become present on the trail, they do not go away. And we can also see from trends on other cameras that there's usually an uptick in wildlife observations in the early season, regardless of whether people are in the areas with the camera. So these are all 5 cameras in which we have data for the full season. And you can see that a lot of them do spike with animals in May or June and record less observations later in the season. And those are cameras that are not on the trail, so likely not as affected by visitor use. This is the total species richness and biodiversity here in the preserve. In 2025, we recorded 22 different species on our preserve cameras. This is an increase from last year. We only recorded 17 species. So there does seem to be a slight increase in biodiversity. We've definitely seen more arboreal birds this year, including Steller's jays, gray jays, robins, song sparrows, and dark-eyed juncos. And our first screech owl ever recorded. All right, these are trail camera photos from a camera that we just put up this season, which is at a fen about 10 feet from where the old trail was rerouted from. So in the background, you can see some less dense vegetation right here. That's actually the old trail. It's pretty much grown in and you can just barely see the remnant of it left. And this fen is about 10 feet from the trail, where we recorded lots of wildlife utilizing the fen and drinking from the fen. Hopefully more now that people aren't on the trail, which is only 10 feet away from it. And we've observed no humans on the old section of trail. It's very muddy and unpleasant to hike, so I'm guessing that's why. Okay, next section is environmental education, which is my favorite and most fulfilling part of the job. My favorite quote about it is, through education comes understanding, through understanding, appreciation, and through appreciation, protection. Our main form of environmental education are in the form of guided hikes, which this year we offered a few new locations, including the Blue River Trail and Hannah's Way Trail, because we've officially gotten permission from Summit County Open Space to lead hikes on their trails. We're still offering the preserve hikes when it's open. Some of these other hikes allow for larger groups and a more variety of experiences. This picture here is from the Hannah's Way Trail. And hikes can range from themes from wildflowers, wildlife, foraging, natural history, and trees. This year we led over 200 hikes in the preserve and about 50 hikes at all of the other locations. All of the hikes at this location were foraging themed hikes, which has been a very hot topic this season. We started a new program called Wild Tea Time, where I teach people about foraging safely and sustainably for things like tea leaves, which are much more sustainable than fruit or fungus. Over 75 people have attended the 3 tea times that I've offered so far, and there's still one more left next Saturday. We also do environmental education in the form of interpretive stations. This is informal outreach in which we are set up with educational opportunities at trailheads, and people can choose to stop by if they like and talk with us for a few minutes. Our themes are generally wildlife themes with a corresponding leave no trace rule, such as if we're talking about bear, maybe bear aware, or moose, respect wildlife. And we also helped out the Breckenridge Tourism Office with some outreach, including their Breckenridge Wildflower Watch and the Leaf Brief, both of which you can see on gobrec.com. Thank you.
Ella, that was great. Do you have we might have questions for you. Don't scurry off too soon.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was really good, Ella. Thank you.
That wasn't a question, that was a statement.
I know.
I'm just kicking it off.
I agree, though.
Well, did you or the other naturalists have interactions with people in Cucumber Gulch during the closed period?
I would say not as many this year as maybe in years past. But yeah, maybe a few.
What is is the reaction, like lack of education or lack of knowledge or understanding that not seeing signs? Like when you do interact with people during the closed period, is there a theme on why they're there?
Yeah, usually the common response is, "Oh, sorry, we didn't know, we didn't see the sign." I just provide alternatives to hike.
Do you have any idea whether they're people who live here and really do know better, or are they tourists who are clueless?
I mean, yeah, there's really no way to know for sure. Um, I mean, it was pretty 50-50 with people entering from the Peaks Trailhead and people entering from residential and lower entrances. So I would say about half and half.
And I would say this year, our crew worked specifically with the Cucumber Gulch group a lot to fortify entrances and exits where they saw a lot of more residential folks that's in their backyard.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
it'd be easy for them because it is right there.
and we did improve a lot of fencing and also installed a lot more signage this summer as well with the group. Yeah.
As you're, thank you for being out there at the tip of the spear and having the conversations and engaging with the guided hikes. Curious if there's any, what are some of the more common questions or the more common misunderstandings or understandings? Is there anything that's kind of consistent that you're hearing out there that we might be able to help or address, or is it all over the board?
Kind of all over the board. And usually people just say, "Oh, we didn't know," and they don't necessarily offer a
Even beyond
reason.
Cucumber Gulch, just like in general, just when you're out there with people in our backyard, what kind of feedback you might be getting?
Really just all types of feedback. I think interacting with when it's open, definitely more tourists than residents. But yeah, I would say probably 50-50 during the closure.
Ella, and I do have to say, on your tours, the popularity of the folks that go out on your tour, you have a lot of repeat folks that do come out.
Got a fan base.
Yeah, you do. And it's just, I think it just shows that need. Not only Ella does such a great job, but people really like that guided learning experience out there. And to be able to provide that through our program and have that for our visitors is pretty special.
Yeah. Yeah. Being that this is my 5th year, I'm starting to see a lot more repeat kind of people. And every time, I think this season, almost every guided hike I led, there was somebody who'd been on a different one with either me or another naturalist. And almost everybody who's come to a tea time has signed up for a guided hike after. And it's been really great, not only offering guided hikes, but offering these more accessible type of programs that don't involve any hiking, because those have been great for people who may not be able to or may not want to attend a several mile long guided hike.
That's great. Ella, 2 quick questions. You said you took a break midsummer for the beaver monitoring. What's the rationale behind that? The break?
So the beavers are, according to Jess from Ecometrics, is that they're just more important to monitor in the shoulder seasons. And that if we're seeing them in the spring shoulder season, it's likely that we're going to continue seeing them throughout the summer. And then we really want to see what they're doing right before winter. If all the beavers that were there in the spring have still made it, are they still there? Are they going to be spending the winter here? And then also, yeah, we just get busier with other things during that mid-season.
Got it. The other question was, when you do Hannah's Way, when you hike that, where do you park, or where do your folks park that participate?
I suggest that people take the Swan Mountain Flyer to the Baldy Trailhead. It's a nice, accessible place because people can utilize the bus there.
Got it. Great.
And do they?
Yeah.
Very good.
Any other questions? Ella, thank you so much. Your passion is well demonstrated. We are happy to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yes.
No. Thanks, Ella.
Okay, so we'll do Breck history.
So we have Larry Crispell and Larissa O'Neill coming on behalf of Breck History. Yeah, it's in the packet.
Okay.
And we can give them we'll get you have your memo pulled up if you'd like to go through it. Okay. Just as a sequence update, what we want to do is have this discussion and then talk to Greg about Summit Huts, talk about our field trip, and then circle back to Breck history and make a recommendation.
And Kristen is, should be on, just an update.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for taking the time to, allowing us to hijack part of your site visit today and showcase some of the work that's been going on at the Lorium this summer. We're really proud of how that site has turned out. Before we dive into 2026, which is really why we're here today. Oh, great. Lovely. All right. So maybe before we dive into 2026, I just wanted to give a quick update on where we are with a couple other projects that you might be wondering about. And then we'll move into priorities for next year. Let's see. This loads. So we'll talk for briefly here about the Preston town site over in Gold Run. And this is a 1940 shot. None of these buildings are still there, but gives a sense of the town site that was there at that time. And as a reminder, here was the cabin that's on town land and county land that we decided to take on, and the famous yellow strap that was keeping it together for a little while. And as we talked about at the Lorium, the process to stabilize these buildings is not, lift it up and put a roof on it and we're good to go. We really had to level it out, deal with some of that erosion that had happened over time. So this is, again, Ty Courtwright's team who did this work, took it apart piece by piece, labeled everything, and slowly put it back together. So this is the finished product today. It's looking great. Similar to the Lorium, we don't intend to have this open to the public, so just went through a more simple process for permission on this one at the county level. And then we were also really fortunate to be able to take on a second cabin at the Preston town site. This one is owned by Robin Theobald. There's sort of a patchwork of property ownership out there, and he has contributed. Larry mentioned all of the material resources he has provided. He is also making a significant financial contribution to this one. This is the before, here's the after of that cabin. So again, really a beautiful end product with a similar strategy here. You'll start to see a pattern in our work. We talked about the Lorium, and I think I'll breeze through this very quickly, but here is that boarding house in the back. Larry referenced the other sizable structure that there is absolutely nothing left of, and then the little blacksmith shop over here that we were able to protect too. And here's that lovely before photo. And it really brings us back to how far we came with this one. And again, as I mentioned on the site visit, how involved these projects are, where we have to panelize everything and take them apart to put them back together. Okay, and here's that blacksmith shop. You can see the weird drainage kind of swimming pool experience it had there for much of its time, and where we were able to lift it up. And here it was getting craned out of its spot to a different site or a spot on the site. And then here's that gravel pad that Larry talked about being brought back. And you all saw it today. It's looking fabulous. So there we are. All right, I'm gonna, exit out of that. And let's see. Oops. I might just need to get back to the packet. But I got it here. And then just a couple other things, just verbal updates. I know the Jesse Mill is one that a lot of you have wondered, okay, it's great you guys did that project. What's going on with the flat rack bridge there. And just want to assure you, we're working really hard to try and get that out of there yet this fall. We've just had some delays with contractors being so incredibly busy. And we have a couple options. We think we're hoping Columbine Construction will help us get that out of there and then do the restoration work so we can finally say we're good to go on that site. But I know that has been a concern of some of yours and others in the community. So thank you for your patience. The Riling Punt is one too, near the Riling Dredge, that we're going to finish this fall and get that stabilized. It's a smaller project. And then all of these sites will get interpretive signs, but that'll likely be next year before we get to that. All right. Let's dive into next year. All right, so just as, again, kind of a refresher, we live this every day, but the reason we select these projects or propose them to you all is not totally arbitrary. We did complete that historic resources management plan. We did an update last year, and we really look at some criteria that we use to evaluate which projects we feel are ready to move forward. And also, certainly looking at the fact that we have a great team right now and trying to be aggressive with the work that we want to complete. But when we look at these projects on town and county open space, we're looking at location, primarily those that are located in the front country zone, accessibility, somewhat close to a trailhead or a two-wheel drive road, interpretive potential. Do we have photographs? Do we have primary source documents that help us tell a story about each site? Because without a story, these sites don't really have as much meaning for people. Also risk, or do we have sites that are collapsing? I would say the Lorium was a great example of that. The boarding house was really at a point where we were just shy of losing that one. One more winter, it could have been completely gone. And then significance. What's uniquely interesting about each of these sites. And we'll walk through some of these. And I think, as Larry described at the Lorium today, we see some patterns at these mining sites. We see boarding houses, we see cabins, we see mill structures, but each one that I'll talk about does have something that we feel is particularly unique to it. All right, so let's go back to the mini mine. This is one that we did put on hold last year. We brought in front of you all and talked about, as you may remember, trying to kind of stabilize and reconstruct part of the compressor building that you can see in these photographs. And we decided, after getting some feedback from the town council, that we should put a pause on this and think about a reduced scope for now. And so a reminder, here's the site as it appears now. A lot there that doesn't maybe make a lot of sense, but it does have a lot of historic fabric remaining. And we are interested in trying to simply organize what's there, inventory it, kind of expose some of the foundations, the forge, some of the materials there that still have historical significance, and also get some stuff out of the kind of water that still is coming out of the hillside. And so we can save what's left and have some options for the future. Now, to be completely transparent, I think our board would still like to see a vision of some sort of structure that is put back in place, made out of steel, and reusing some historic material. This is, again, a vision. It's not part of the current proposal. We're looking at about $25,000 for next year to really focus on that inventory, organizing, protecting some of the historic fabric that's up there, and really getting a sense of what we have to work with. The next one I'll talk about here is the Arctic Stamp Mill, which is located in Monte Cristo Gulch, so a little bit more remote than the sites we typically talk about. Now, the Arctic is interesting for those of you who have been out there and seen it. The adit itself is like halfway up the cliff on North Star Mountain, and the mill is in the valley. And when this was constructed, there was a hydro plant that ran the mill, but it ultimately didn't survive very long because it was like a mile down from the adit, and they needed to freight all the ore down to this mill before it could then even be sent off for further processing. But what remains here is the battery that was in the stamp mill. And it's, even though it has fallen over in recent years, it's still relatively intact. What's tricky about this site right now is we believe it's located on Colorado Springs Utilities land, and we've been in touch with them about this site. And the little red dots are recent GIS markers that were conducted by some consultants we hired to take a look out there. And what's tricky is that we also have Forest Service markers, survey markers that go right through the mill itself. So we have kind of competing land ownership information, and that's something we really need to figure out, because we do have support from Colorado Springs Utilities to move forward, and the project itself would be moving the stamp battery over to the Jesse Mill, which did have the same vintage stamp mill, but all the equipment was moved years ago. So this would be an opportunity to preserve what's at the Arctic now, but put it in a place where it could be interpreted and a better story told. Just to access this site for our consultants, they needed to have like a health and safety plan, and it took about a month to get permission. So this isn't a welcoming site. It's not a site that can be easily interpreted currently. So normally we would say, yeah, let's preserve and interpret the site in its original location. But I think if it is in fact on utilities land, then that will be hard for us to do. So this is a rendering of what it could look like at the Jesse Mill out on the side of Gold Run Road, with the battery restored under a shelter similar to what we have for the Keystone Drill. Again, it saves the resource. It also is a good storytelling opportunity. So this one, because it is more involved, has a larger budget of about $130,000, but Ty is ready to go on this one, as he is with anything we throw at him. And I think for us, the main thing is sorting out this land ownership discrepancy, which has been a little bit tricky for us. I would say if we find that it's in the national forest, that's a different process. As you all know, it would be much more involved and take much longer, and we would have to go through some different hoops to see this one to fruition.
Marissa, can I quickly ask, is the issue where the delineation is of the land ownership, or is it that it crosses both or into both?
I think it's just we need to confirm the ownership itself. We have the survey markers, and then we have GIS information that's different than the Forest Service survey markers. So what we would like to do is get another survey done to inform all of us, but we need to have the Forest Service get on board with that in order to formally go through that process.
That one too. Could you go back to the over GIS photo? How far is it from those roads?
All right, and I should have mentioned this is Blue Lakes Road. Larry, I would say it's a couple hundred
Roughly
yards.
less than 150 yards as the crow flies. A little more when you have to walk.
There much terrain to deal with? Is it sloped or?
It's, there is a slope going down to it, but it would be, it's doesn't cause an accessibility problem. The mill has fallen kind of off a small little cliff. It was built onto a small cliff, just like the mill was up at the, when you look at the Lorium, it's on the edge. And so it's fallen down there. So it would involve a crane or some piece of equipment to pick it back up.
As far as access is concerned, how do you envision kind of getting to where you need to be with the crane, for example, and kind of getting stuff out of there?
Most likely it'll be Ty's telehandler, which is a big 4-wheel drive vehicle that can get down there and traverse it. It is a challenge, and we're still evaluating the best way to do it, but we believe it can be done. And the structure would be taken into pieces and components, individual components, and pulled out of there. Each one of those cast iron rods is about between 600 and 700 pounds.
Wow.
So the whole thing is too much for a, almost any crane that we could get down that road to handle. So we'll break it into small bits that we can handle with a smaller piece of equipment.
And is there any general, like, sort of obvious access where that vehicle would be able to travel easily without too much disturbance?
Yes, there's an existing 2-track that originally served the mill right from, I'm not sure, yeah, it's visible, but there's an existing track that goes from what's it called? Blue Lakes Road down to the site. So with some improvement, we'd be able to use it.
And I should also mention it would require crossing national forest to get to the site regardless. You can see there's like a little break between the road and the black outline, which is Colorado Springs Utilities. And after talking to a few folks, if we are not dramatically or really altering the 2-track itself, our understanding is that we would not have to go through a Forest Service permitting process in order to get to the Arctic. Yeah. Okay. This one's a tricky one. All right. And then I'll just touch on a few other ones that we're hoping to get to. Mountain Pride is up past the Lorium on Baldy a little ways. And this site was sort of a flash in the pan gold mine, didn't operate very long, but when it was going, it was really going. And they had this whole residential complex. They actually had a school with 13 students up here at the Mountain Pride. And we're really fortunate to still have some of the buildings up here. Several of them have been altered in the 70s and 80s. And there's also just a lot of refuse and weird materials scattered around the site. So we'd like to go in and potentially take a hybrid approach. We've heard from certain people that they really love the mining history. Some people on our board would also like to consider retaining this kind of funky 1970s, 80s story and really do more of a storyline of how these buildings are repurposed over time. So that's something we're considering, but overall we feel like this site has great potential and these structures are still relatively intact. Larry talked a little bit about the Lorium Mill earlier when we were out at our site visit, but the real purpose here is to re-erect some of those ore bin frames that would have been at the bottom of the structure. Here's just a quick rendering of kind of what that would look like. It's not fully there, but bringing those triangle frames back up to right and squaring off those ends of the mill as well. This is a little cabin. We call it the One Step Over cabin. I'm not sure if that's its official name, but it's right at the corner of Prospect Road and the One Step Over Trail. And one that we don't know a lot of the history of it, but it's in a pretty prominent location. And there's a lot of obviously motorized use that goes through there and is in good enough condition that we feel we could protect this one. And then at the extension mill in Gold Run Gulch, we're really focused on this. It's called a Portland filter. There, this piece of equipment that's next to the mill, and it would kind of concentrate and use, it was like a centrifuge to dry the ore concentrate. And pretty remarkable that it's still there. So this would be a pretty small one, cutting back some trees, interpreting what this was. We're not intending to do anything to resurrect the mill itself. Larry suggested that we can maybe bring the top timbers back into plumb or write those rather than having them cantilever there. And I think that's it. So happy to answer any questions about any of these projects. The total budget, I should mention, for all of these would be about $255,000. And we would be certainly open to BOSAC looking to contribute some to these projects, but also going in front of town council. And we will be needing to go to OSAC and the Board of County Commissioners as well. So you all are step one in a lengthy process, and we appreciate your support.
Thanks, Larissa. Yeah, do it.
How are you able to prioritize, or do you just have a wish list and kind of work your way from A to B, or how do you decide what is at the top of your list?
Yeah, so I would just refer back to that plan that we updated about a year and a half ago, which we call the Historic Resources Management Plan. And that's really our strategy document for why we take on these projects and what our schedule is for looking to do those. And so we have our criteria that we're looking to fill. Some of it has to do with just the team that we have available. And so we are trying to do as much as we can right now with Ty being available. And I mean, Larry is out there almost every day and acting as basically a volunteer project liaison on all of these projects. We are still pretty focused on town and county open space sites. I think we have many sites that are within the national forest, but we just recognize that it's challenging right now to ask for permission, go through that process, know even who to talk to get some of those simpler projects done. For instance, like repainting Baker's tank is something we'd like to do, but our understanding is that that would require quite a bit of evaluation just to get permission to do a project like that.
Okay, part two, sorry.
Bring it.
So do you give much consideration for proximity from site to site? For example, are the things around Preston that you've been working on, or, more work around the Jesse, or, that Lorium is looking like sort of a destination kind of museum, place to be too. So is it allocation of resources, or?
Yeah, I think, we desire to be in places that the majority of the public can access, right? So that's one of our criteria for evaluation. You mentioned Preston. I think we've spent a couple of years now focusing on sites in the Gold Run area, and we envision, as a board and as a staff, that Gold Run has the same potential that French Gulch does in terms of being able to tell a storyline out there. That's similar. And, the Jesse, there's Preston, certainly. There's the extension that I talked about. There's Dry Gulch. There's the Little Corporal Mine. There's a whole little path and route that could be taken and interpretive signs installed that do a similar thing that we've done in French Gulch.
Marissa, on the mini mine project, the ghost structure, I think you referred to it. Would we be losing any trees? I know that was a point of contention last year around this time, was bringing machinery up the trail there and losing some trees.
Yeah.
Do you foresee that with the scope of what's planned for there?
I think so. For this year, we're just with the sort of inventorying and organizing of materials. I think we're looking at some sort of small spider crane that has a width of about, is it 50 inches? 49, sorry, close. To get to the site. Yeah. And I think the ghost structure concept, we just want to be open with you all that it is something that you may, if we get permission to do phase one, that you might see in a future phase, but it's completely independent from what we're talking about for this year. I think for us, regardless of what we end up doing long-term, being able to get some of the material out of the water and inventorying it and understand what we really have to work with is the end goal for 2026. But Larry, do you want to say anything else?
Sure. And specifically, Jay, I think you're asking about the ghost structure itself, a tree removal as on the trail going up to it.
I guess I'm more interested in the plans for for 2026, whatever. If 2026 plans don't include the ghost structure, then I'd prefer not just focus on next year and what machinery is needed up there and what impact that would have on the trail.
So for this year, yeah. So no ghost structure. So as referring back to Larissa's statement, which I agree with, which is we hope to get a small, it's called a spider crane. It's basically a collapsible crane that expands when you get up there, and that would probably be the only machine, one of two machines we'd get up that trail. And we believe we could get up that trail with minimal or no loss of trees. So we may have to shore up a little, provide a on the lower side, a plank or a way to get past a tree or two. At the site itself, there's some aspen trees. When we set up, there's very small aspen trees on either side of the existing mini mine. And in order to store these materials and stage the crane, we may have to work on relocating or otherwise dealing with this very small aspect. They're small caliber. They're say maximum 2 inch, but there's probably, 15 of them on one side and 10 or 20 on the other. But we may have to come up with a plan and bring it back on how to deal with those aspen trees to give us space to basically, we'd love to pull those components of the building. They're the gable end walls are relatively intact, and we'd like to keep them relatively intact. So the dream would be eventually they would go back in that ghost structure as complete original historic fabric. And so that's why we need a little space up there. We hope to start this process early as possible. I talked with Ty about it yesterday, and depending on what the conditions are from snow, that has a great exposure up there. It melts off early. Our goal is to get in there ASAP, and so that we're doing work that front loads on the season. So to minimize the impact of the trail use with hiking and mountain biking. So that's our goal.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have you guys, the ghost structure idea is really interesting. Have you guys ever seen in any other communities or any other restoration projects, something similar where something represents some of what was there, even if it's not restored in full?
It's very interesting. And Peter Grossuch did the research on this. He was down in last winter. He spent a fair amount of time down in the Phoenix area. And there is a historic resource down there that is a ghost structure, and it complies with the national standards and a National Park Service standards. It's actual category. And he sent us back pictures of that. And what it is, a ghost structure, there's another one actually, it's the Ben Franklin House in Philadelphia.
Oh.
And it was actually done under when Michael Giller, who's on our board, was the main go-to guy for preservation for the National Park Service. And so this is a category. It's nothing that we've invented. It's something that exists and that has value and is considered preservation. So that's where it's coming from. And we have some great examples which you'd love to share with you when you want to see them.
Yeah, that and the relocation of something from a site that isn't visible to a site that is visible, that's of the same era. Both those concepts are really interesting. So thanks for bringing those to us.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Duke mentioned, we'll have our discussion in a bit, but thank you both for the site visit and for this presentation. You guys are
Thank you
very
for your support.
knowledgeable people. Yes.
You have a great team, and it's
okay.
It starts with a great community that believes in itself. And so we're happy to be part of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
thanks for coming.
Get back to the packet, Tony.
Okay, so next we'll do Summit Huts and Greg.
Yeah.
Can we have Larry read children's books, like for like Audible age?
He reads to me on a pretty regular, that's what he writes like to me.
Get up here.
Yeah.
Greg,
Hi, everybody.
Tony has to do a keyboard shortcut. Bam.
Good to go? Okay. Well, thanks for having me here to talk with you. The purpose of my wanting to be in front of you is regarding parking at the Lorium, the new parking area that was just constructed. So Summit Huts recently, just last week, it all closed, was the recipient of a cabin and land donation up Boreas Pass Road. This cabin we are calling, it's kind of behind the video there, but is the Atlantic Lode Cabin, named after the claim that the cabin is located on. It's about 4.5 miles up Boreas Pass Road, and in the coming days, hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be submitting our official conditional use permit application to the county. One of the key components that we're working on is to figure out parking, overnight parking for guests to be able to access this cabin. And in the background of both the first slide and this slide is the actual Atlantic Lode Cabin that we're talking about. So we are currently using Boreas Pass Trailhead right now for overnight winter parking for Section House and Ken's Cabin. Those two structures are located at the top of Boreas Pass, about 6.5 miles up the road. So I've gone in front of OSAC in the county to request additional parking spaces at Boreas Pass in the wintertime. And I'm now in front of you to talk about summer and fall parking at the Lorium Trailhead. So the thinking behind this is Boreas Pass Trailhead is a very popular and busy trailhead in the summertime, and certainly now in the season we're headed into in the fall. In the wintertime, it's not used as heavily. And so it would make sense for Summit Huts to have additional parking there when that site is not being used. Conversely, Lorium, as we know, will be very busy in the wintertime and less busy, anticipating fewer people there in the summer and fall. And so it might make sense to reverse those parking situations and change the access to the cabin during those two seasons. So here is a map of where the Atlantic Lode Cabin is located. So Boreas Pass Road right here, that's Baker's Tank. And then following the road all the way back to the parking area right here. And then here's where we were this afternoon at the Lorium new parking area. And this would be our proposed summer and fall access route. Would be up Lorium to Mountain Pride, obviously Baker's Tank, and then you would drop into Boreas Pass Road and continue the rest of the way up to the cabin on the road. So one of the things that is certainly core to Summit Huts mission, but also will be important as part of our conditional use permit is that there would be non-motorized access to the cabin. So winter and summer, we would be requiring our guests to, access the cabin either on foot, bike, in the wintertime, ski or snowshoe. I think that's the last slide. Mine's pretty short, but I wanted to mention just what we're doing as far as signage up at the Boreas Pass Trailhead. Currently, we've got some big old tire wheels and just a post that says overnight parking for hut guests only, and then those can be moved around with snow removal. And additionally, I'm not sure what the plan is for the Lorium and if there's going to be overnight parking there, but there is no overnight parking at Boreas Pass Trailhead unless you're a hut user. And so there is also signage up there now dictating no overnight parking, and then these signs that can be moved around based on snow removal for winter parking at Boreas. Obviously, we wouldn't have the snow removal piece, but I could envision something like that being used at the Lorium Trailhead, where we would designate where the overnight spots would be. Like Duke talked about when we were there, certainly the one side of the lot would be better for the landowner that's adjacent to the parking lot, and that would work fine for us. The Atlantic Load cabin will be have a 6-person occupancy is what we're requesting as part of our permit. And so we'd like to see 2 parking spaces. And as with all of our cabins, if a bunch of people wanted to drive, and then they're going to have to carpool and figure it out, we have a certain number of designated spots. Certainly at Section House and Ken's, same thing at Sister's Cabin. And so we don't see that happen very often, but it would, we're just going to have 2, and we'll issue 2 parking passes, and then guests would need to figure out the remainder of that if needed. I think that's probably it. I'd love to answer any questions about it, but
How long is it to walk from or to go from the Lorium Trailhead to Atlantic Load?
that's a good question. I am not sure. It's about 4.5 miles up Boreas Pass Road if you were to park at Boreas Pass and go that direct route. I would, looking at it visually, I'd guess it's in the similar range, but I've not, Strava'd that or anything to see the exact mileage.
Do you anticipate users to drive to the cabin, unload food and during the summer, obviously, and gear, drive back, park, and then, like you said, walk, hike or bike to the cabin? Or is that somehow frowned upon?
It's definitely frowned upon, but enforceable, it's not necessarily something that we, at least at this point, enforce. That does happen at Francie's Cabin. You can drive up Crystal Lakes Road, so people can drive up that publicly open road, unload a cooler if they wanted to, and then even park elsewhere. We don't have parking on our, what is called hut envelope, but certainly people could do that, and that's not something that we're like actively patrolling. It's highly discouraged and not part of the ethos of a visit to a cabin. But that's something that we're, there's a gate across the road. Like there's probably a 200-yard driveway that goes back to the cabin with a gate right at Boreas Pass Road that would remain locked all the time. So there's still some work to be done, even if someone was doing a drop off like what you're talking about.
Kristen, who is attending virtually, she had a curiosity about how busy the huts are in the summer. Do you envision these spots being occupied most of the summer? What would you guess that would look like?
It's a great question. And since it's a brand new cabin, I don't 100% know. Our cabins are far less busy in the summertime than they are in the winter. We do about 85% of our business in the winter. Part of that is because there's only 2 cabins open this summer, Francie's Cabin and Janet's Cabin, compared to 5 in the winter. This will be then the 6th. Even regarding just, only having 2 open, the occupancy rates are much lower in the summer. This cabin fits a totally different niche within our other cabins. It's much smaller. We're going to do single party booking at the cabin, so there won't be groups coming and going like there are at our other structures. So I think there are some unknowns as far as occupancy rates and what those might look like.
Okay, great.
Question, just based on my historical knowledge, is there still some plan to use this for kind of lesser abled, like BOEC and some of that kind of overlap access as well?
Yes,
and those would be driven obviously to the site.
They could be driven. One of the things that we've determined though is the maximum occupancy of this cabin would be at 6. So some of the donors' original visions for this cabin was to be, as Chris described, have it be very accessible, have people be able to get in there. The occupancy numbers restrict some of that a little bit. So a BOEC group, if you had a few people that needed mobility access, but then you have a few people that are with them to support, you've maybe already exceeded that capacity.
Right.
So one of the things we're doing with this cabin is some of the revenue from the cabin will go to a scholarship fund to help offset the cost of those groups utilizing primarily Francie's cabin. That's our most popular cabin. Also has vehicular access if needed, but school groups, other nonprofits, all kinds of groups really gravitate towards Francie's, as you know. And so part of the revenue from Atlantic Load will help support those groups to be able to utilize Francie's.
Duke, Tony, do we have, what conversations have we had about getting, kind of the walking traffic off of Warriors Pass Road? I was just up there midday today and it's crazy. So I guess that's my only real apprehension. It's less the parking part of it. It's more, adding another set of walkers to the path.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. It surprises me how much traffic there is on that. I do point out though, where folks are jumping onto Boreas Pass Road is by the Baker's Tank, right? So kind of similar to our trail network, you always kind of see that most traffic at the beginning of the road. And so these folks would be kind of entering, halfway up. So it would be traffic, but it would be less traffic that would be seeing.
Anyone else? We'll do our discussion on this as well. No, not now.
Yeah, I do have a question. Is there a time, I think we talked about this a little bit, but I don't remember, and it might be nice for all of us to understand. Is there like a time that might be aligned with when the permit expires and reassesses? Like, would we be approving these parking spots for X number of years and then we reevaluate? How do you envision that working?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're going to be requesting a 5-year conditional use permit. So I've never been through that process, but I assume at the end of the 5 years, we would get recommendations or suggestions on things that we would have to do if we wanted to continue to use the cabin under those same, for the same purposes. So I would think at that 5-year mark, this group, OSAC, everyone would get a chance to evaluate how it's working, and Summit Huts, of course, too. Likely, if it's not working for either of those groups, it's probably not working for us either. And so we would be looking for alternatives to figure out what we could potentially do.
Thanks, Craig. So yeah, I think we can revisit this in our October meeting, but it'd be nice to know if there's information that you guys would like to have gathered between now and then that Greg could help with or we can work on. Please let us know. And if it doesn't come to you now, you can let us know later, but anything to inform that discussion, we can dig up. Maybe.
And one other piece I'll add is we do see this being closed, probably for the month of May. And again, maybe, for the last week of October and first couple weeks of November. So there would be a natural closure in the fall and spring that would offer that delineation point for the parking to switch over as well. So it's not like, one random day, all of a sudden now you park over here, but it would match our seasonal, open and closure times.
Greg, I apologize if I missed this along the way in your presentation, but if demand in the summer is relatively low, what is the rationale to have this one open in the summer versus your other huts or at all?
Yeah, great question. We would like to have all of our cabins open year-round. Section House and Ken's cabin are owned by the National Forest, and we operate those on a special use permit from the Pike San Isabel National Forest. So that is not possible. And then Sister's cabin is located in a sensitive area for the Canada lynx. And so when Sister's cabin was built, part of that part of the conditions from the Forest Service is that it could only be a winter use cabin.
Mm.
So that leaves Francie's and Janet's, which are both open in
Okay.
the summer.
That makes sense.
And Janet's has some restrictions too regarding elk habitat that's there. So we work around the seasonality. But it would be the first property for Summit Huts that would be an in-holding where we would actually own, the cabin and the 5 acres surrounding it. And so we would like to open it as much as possible.
Speaking of the 5 acres around it, is that a kickoff to some trail connectivity, or which gotta ask?
Yeah, I don't have, and it's certainly something I could bring to the next meeting so
Didn't
you can
realize
see
it
the
was-
parcel.
I didn't
And,
realize it was a full 5 acres. That's
yeah, the way the parcel's it's long and skinny and crosses Boreas Pass Road. And I'm not sure how much of it, but probably at least an acre, or actually on the other side of Boreas Pass Road.
Just to be clear, Greg, you have not gone to OSAC yet with this, right?
I have gone to OSAC, yep, and shared just last week with OSAC, but we have not formally submitted our conditional use permit application to the county. And I anticipate that will be submitted by the end of the week, probably Friday.
Great. And what was the outcome from OSAC?
Catherine's here. They were, is it fair to say favorable to that? So they were supportive of it. I am, just to be transparent, I think it's we already use overnight parking at Boreas Pass, and so that's tested, that's known. They have very good data on how often that parking lot is full, and there's less so with Lorium because that's new.
Does anyone have any requests, as Duke just mentioned, for additional information that staff could provide at our October meeting?
Maybe just any information we have from disturbances at some of the trailheads where there is overnight parking, trash, noise, whatever, if there's been any reports of that, that'd be great to know.
I'm just fascinated by the idea that somebody had a 5 acre parcel up there and built that cabin to begin with. Like, interesting. I mean, I'm sorry to take time, but I was like, how did it wind up coming to you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't have the full history of the cabin, but I think it was built in the early 2000s. And then the owners that donated it to Summit Huts got it maybe 10 years after that. And they acquired it with the purpose of having it be their own kind of ski hut and used it intermittently throughout more actually in the summer than the winter, but would use it as a ski cabin for themselves in the winter. And now they're not using it as much, and they'd like to see the cabin be used, and also some of the revenue from the cabin go towards other groups being able to access the backcountry.
This is like a fortunate outcome for a lot of the stuff that we work hard to sort of avoid. It seems like this is a
Could have been much worse.
acceptable,
Mm.
reasonable use of the property, but this is a good reminder for us to have stuff like this in even the more remote places. So
And I think it's not lost on this group, but Summit Huts is committed to non-motorized use and access in the wintertime. So we don't have a snowmobile, we don't have a snowcat, anything. We maintain all of our cabins via human power. And so, that it could have been a big impact on Boreas Pass Road in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you,
Thank
Greg.
so much.
Thanks
That's
so
great.
much. All right. Okay, next up is our field trip discussion, our field trip in October.
Yeah, so we did pick a date for the October field trip. I apologize. It's always tough trying to get everybody on the same schedule, but we have committed to the date. Jefferson County and their staff are looking forward to hosting us. And we're kind of looking at a tentative schedule of going down, having starting out with a Q&A, a little lunch, and then exploring some of their open space system and possibly their peaks to trail, where they're connecting Jefferson County to Idaho Springs and looking at infrastructure as a possible field trip to explore. And then just wanted to touch base with you guys about some hot topics that you would like to discuss with their staff, and possibly maybe some of their advisory boards. And just a, slight frame, they are a large staff, um, multiple acres of land that they manage, and a lot of high visitor use. So a lot of the same issues that we deal with, but on a larger scale. So just kind of want to throw it out to you guys. This is your field trip and what you would like to take and learn from. So
I'd really like to hear a lot like what we did at Aspen, is how they handle crowds, how they handle dogs, how they handle poop that never gets picked up, trash, those kinds of things that we experience not quite as dramatically as some of these bigger systems do, but there's still a problem here. And I'd love to hear how, whether they have rangers, do they have paid staff that are out there enforcing it, the rules?
okay. Thanks, Bobby. Also allow class 1 e-bikes on their trails.
Everybody makes mistakes.
That would be worth talking about, I think.
Trails, or do they limit it to some?
I would say majority of their system is open. There might be a few parks where they're not, but majority of their system is open.
I'd be curious to hear about their management strategies with single or directional trails, et cetera, anything they implement there. And then I'm also wondering about their guiding documents and how they determine projects, how that their workflow is with such a expansive 56,000 acres.
Yes.
It's a lot of acres.
And it's interesting. They are in the process of rewriting some of their guiding documents. I spoke with them and they're like, our guiding documents were too specific. We need them to be more overarching and visionary. And I was like, oh, that sounds familiar because we kind of went the opposite way. And so that could be,
Quintessential Jeffco.
yeah, that could be a good discussion. Yeah.
Tony, do you know offhand their structure? Do they have an advising council commission like we do, or?
Do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I threw it out there to see if some of their members would want to be a part of the Q&A as well.
What do you think? Are
Yeah.
they coming?
I haven't heard back to see who will actually be there for the
Okay.
full Q&A.
That would be great, though.
Okay.
Yeah, be awesome.
Cool.
What else? Anyone have any other ones?
Coming with us?
Ella?
Ella?
I don't
Do
believe-
do they have a naturalist? I mean, it might be something that if Ella came, she could interact with.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend, but when this one kind of came up as an idea, obviously the whole infrastructure of the Plains to Peaks Trail is amazing and what they're doing there. But even beyond that, like the infrastructure that they have at their trailheads and kind of when and where they decide to do their full, toilet setups and kind of the base, like almost a base area structure at their trailheads. I'd be curious what their criteria is around that and then how they've scaled it. Because they probably have some of the best, you're getting ready for bike ride. Bathrooms are amazing. They're clean, well maintained. So yeah, I'd be curious their philosophies around that.
And do they have some of the systems like we do where you have to make a reservation and take a shuttle and that sort of thing?
I'm not sure in all they're so
They're-
varied and
Mm.
so I'm not sure about that, but we could be a topic of conversation. These are all good. I'm just getting nervous about time frame already. Like how are you gonna fit it all in? But
Especially considering how to talk.
I think if you have time, just kind of given our previous conversations about what to do with Aspen Alley, I'd be curious to know their process and the genesis of some of the trails that they've, like Apex, which I used to ride, which was there were no rules, not that long ago, and how they got to it and what kind of reaction came from both, Jeffco commissioners and the public at large, et cetera, because that is a very popular trail.
Good
Yeah.
idea. And this is your childhood stomping grounds, right?
This is where I have many scars from a certain part of that trail
Mhm.
with a lot of dares from people.
Good. You might have to chop that down a little at your discretion. I think that it'd all be good though, if we could hit on it. Yeah.
Is this a back and forth conversation? I mean, we have to hear from them, because I mean, I think as a matter of perspective, to go through the conversation again of how maybe we arrived at some of our decision-making processes and force us to kind of be aware of how we approach those things in the future, whether it's successful or not. Good point. I think it's definitely going to be a back and forth, right? Yeah.
Do you see it similar to our Pitkin County visit?
I think it's very similar.
Okay.
Unless you guys have like some other suggestions that we can kind of tweak before we get down there.
I thought that was great.
I did too.
Like you said, Bobby. Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
you good on that one? Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for organizing it.
Yeah.
All right, so other matters related to open space. Anyone have anything? I have two, but I'll wait. I don't know. I'm trying to be polite. Okay, well, I just want to give our trails crew a shout out because the middle flume is awesome. Good job, Tony. You're brilliant. However you conceive of trail alignments is great. And then also if people have seen the upper Cucumber reroute that Ella mentioned, it is so great as well. And it drains so much better than the rest of Cucumber Gulch. Duke and I were texting about how it's like puddles everywhere. And then you get on that section and it's like totally, I mean, basically dry. So we just talk so much about these. And then I hope you hear the positive feedback of the end result. It's important. So have you been on all these trails? Anyone?
Yeah.
Do you like the middle flume? It's just so much more fluid.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, Matt's going tomorrow.
Yeah. And if you haven't had a chance, the bottom Nightmare has been redone, and it's really a big improvement as well.
Okay.
After the negative comments about it? you
Mhm.
mean? Okay.
Yes, after.
Okay. The other thing is that we could have a quick discussion on is last November, we had a joint meeting with OSAC. If you remember, they were like all spanning the entire council chambers, but we thought it might be worth doing one this November. And in this case, we thought it would be good to go to them because we hosted them last year. So if we did that, the thought would be we would forego our typical November meeting and meet with OSAC on Wednesday, November 5th. Staff is curious to know what we think about doing that. But we think it would be good to.
Have we been invited?
Oh. Any thoughts on this, please? It's for dinner. No. We're on your terms.
The county, bring your own.
It works for Kristen. She's the first to say yes.
Is
Yeah.
it we'll have our meeting in October, then we're going to Jefferson County, and then a week later, we're going to sit down with OSAC. Is that too much, too quick? Not for me.
We love open space,
Yeah.
Matt.
And then we can still have a regular meeting.
Well, they're saying, I think staff suggestion is we don't do that.
I agree.
Okay, okay. That might just push us over the edge.
We do.
What does everyone else think? In terms of availability or philosophically, what are we thinking?
I carve out my every third Monday, and beyond that, I'm generally not available.
Okay,
So
okay,
not for me.
okay. Do you have thoughts on that not being available?
No,
You'd be okay if we forged
I think
ahead?
you guys could handle it without me.
Okay, well,
Now that David and I agree on a lot of things,
okay.
and Bobby and I are becoming
No
lockstep.
pressure.
Redundant.
Okay, Bobby, you have thoughts?
No, I'm thrilled with that because then I can go to Books to Movie Club on Monday.
Oh, great. Well, should be prioritized.
Good for you.
Good for me.
Feel like you have too many November things. October meeting, your trip to Jeffco. December is certainly an option too.
Okay. Was the thought too, we could potentially do the RAMI discussion, which might be a really good one to do with the county.
Mhm. Yep, Rami, Catherine and I haven't talked about what else we could put on there and open to suggestions, but as a reminder, Rami is
You got to tell me.
an access management initiative. It's another Volpe Center contract, and they're providing recommendations for all the trailheads that access national forest land that aren't part of Camp Hale. So think Boreas Pass and Peaks and Wakefield, just as examples.
Don't get comfortable with that acronym. They'll change it.
We'll hold it loosely. Anyone else? What are you two thinking about availability? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think we should do that. If
Great.
they still want us.
Yeah, we think Catherine and I can talk and make sure, I guess, am I hearing that open to December, if that might work better for more people, but plan A is November? We can quickly come up with a decision.
Yeah.
If it's December, you'd have a large trivia audience.
We'd have to rethink trivia, but
I don't think you'd have to, I think it would just get more exciting.
okay. Yes. I mean, Catherine was the ringer last year, so
know.
tied with Matt. Let's be clear. That was quite exciting. Yeah. Okay.
We'll work on that.
Great. Thanks, Duke.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jay's turn. Council matters related to open space.
We had the presentation from THK. They did an amazing job, and ERO, and
CDR.
thank you. And they did a great job with council, and I think Craig could talk for hours. He's like the Larry Crispell of designing, where he just had everyone mesmerized and shaking and nodding their head, and really a lot of kind of the same thoughts and corresponding with what this group thought about on the least amount of non-natural materials possible. There was a lot of head nodding on the of eliminating non-natural structures and trying to figure out how to make something grow in that terrain to do that, and and having everything being playable, of these natural materials that encourage climbing and logs and rocks and the whole thing. And so there was a lot of this kind of the same discussion, same comments, and council very much resonated with what this group said. The only other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up after talking with Nikki briefly is more or less where the financial projections are. We just got through CIP planning, capital improvement plan planning, and we're going into budget next week. And just kind of with some of these really big ticket items on the horizon for the town, finishing up with stables, moving into the first phase of runway, that and how that corresponds with sales tax revenue falling. And, I think July looked at it was about 7% down for the month. And how those projections and kind of reworking the assumptions that we're using for the next 5 years and where some of our KPIs are. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but the way that it was structured with all the things we want to do, which is typically, we're very fortunate where, it's like staff goes, hey, do you want A or B? And we're like, yeah, we want both. And everyone's like, yay, let's do both. We're really looking at making choices, because if we do everything that we want to do, that reserve of 135 million, which is where we and our finance department feel comfortable, starts to drop in half 5 years out if we're doing all the things we want to do. And so just kind of with those assumptions, with sales tax revenue falling, kind of pushing some of those items out, I just wanted to provide this group with that little insight that there is opportunity cost now. There are decisions being made in the budget. Yes, absolutely. And so if anyone cares to know more, I'm happy to sit there. I don't want to bore anyone to tears, but I just think that it was just an interesting meeting where we're looking at prioritizing and what that looks like.
And have you made those priorities yet, or is that in the reasonably near future that those will become announced?
We made some decisions for next year on our capital improvements. So there is, when we span out 5 years, the only thing that really matters is the next year for actual decisions of goes and no goes for staff, but it does affect our projections. So if we just move everything that we can't afford in 26 to 27, that's going to make the projections in 27, 28, 29 look really poor. And so we try to be strategic, going, okay, maybe phase 2 of runway lives in year 6, so we don't see it on our 5-year plan. And some of those things were prioritized. Whether it was the bathrooms in between the turf fields in Kingdom Park, or the 106 West permanent home, the e-delivery, things like that were discussed and shifted around.
And you've decided to move those things? Or
Yes.
okay.
Is there any correlation between that conversation and how the BOSAC budget rolls out over the next however several years?
I think BOSAC's budget or open space and trails will be based off sales tax. So I think it will have some attrition if our assumptions are true. Because our budget is based off of a sales tax. And so if we see our sales tax fall 5%, then we would kind of go with that.
And I know it's hard for you to predict the future. Do you think that there's some consideration to be made for the idea that BOSAC recommendations that have financial implication would not necessarily be as well supported or as sort of readily supported?
There is we had the discussion that no matter where the finances live, what fund they live into, they still roll up into the town's overall liquidity, that 135 million that I mentioned earlier. So whether it's an open space or childcare fund or where it is, it still kind of combines to that. I don't believe that there is a loss of appetite to support our open space program. I think that still lives as a top priority within council.
But I thought that we were funded by a 0.5% sales tax for open space.
100%.
So wouldn't we still get whatever 0.5% amounts to?
Absolutely. But if, a potential purchase comes to BOSAC, we say, yeah, absolutely recommend it to council. I think Matt's question, correct me if I'm wrong, is does council have cold feet when it comes to deploying those funds out of the open space fund due to perhaps a decline in revenue moving forward?
And is it more the timing of when the money comes in? Like, if it's all down, we're not going to get as much as we've been used to.
Right.
But we still would have whatever that 0.5% is.
100%. Yep.
And we could use that money for open space.
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
I think the one thing too, Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the CIP was the McCain plan area, and what, around 450,000, I believe, for next year for implementation, something like that. You might be able to find that. But I believe the council left that intact.
It's 550,000 and Shannon Smith relayed that that's kind of a placeholder. We really don't know how much this program is going to cost. And it might be low, but council was supportive of leaving that in there as a placeholder and knowing that it might be above 550.
With the understanding that phasing will probably have a lot to do with it,
Mhm.
that it won't be, hey, it's 900K, let's flip the switch and go. It's like, all right, how do we want to phase this in over the next 5-10 years?
And we did talk to THK about that. That was good to say, let's think about what would we need to build first and what would be the most effective way to phase this stuff. So
Great. Thanks, Jay. So now we would have our Breck history conversation. Is
yes,
that right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. The reason we broke this up this way is because Larry could be the most persuasive human to ever exist. And I wanted to remain objective, and Larissa, not to mention, like, geez. So this, I think, will help us be a bit more objective in terms of probably most specifically determining any sort of financial support we want to offer Breck history.
Good idea.
Do they have their spreadsheet that kind of lines everything
Yeah.
out with costs and
Good thought, Jay.
I don't know. Sorry to pop that on you. I just wasn't sure.
No, that's good to put up.
Yeah, but for the Breck project, I don't know if she provided that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because that just
You
goes
don't
to
have that?
25.
no.
Yeah, just has the
The-
line items on the
I
description.
have it, but I don't know if I tried to email it to you.
Yeah, you could email it to Tony.
Mhm.
We could pull it up.
Guess while doing that, is there been any consistency between what entities contribute to projects? Have been, the county do X% and those or town does X%?
Yeah, good question. The answer is no, and I think I've talked to Larissa about this a little bit. It's difficult for her to plan around that. And Catherine or Mark, please interject, but Larissa's sense is they typically get about 10% support from county open space. And then town seems to fluctuate. They get some money from town general fund, they get a lot of money from grants. Obviously, if they're getting grant funding, they don't ask for as much from us. But you can see in that little table that I made up in the packet that there really isn't a pattern to what, and granted, these are just recommendations, but a pattern to what open space funds have contributed towards Breck history projects on open space. And I think it might be helpful to think about it that way. Like maybe it's a two-part question. Part one is, how does BOSAC feel about this work plan, independent of cost? And part two is, what about just having as a starting point X%? Like typically we want to provide 20, 25, I don't know the number, % towards these projects. And then that way you're looking at these projects, not really thinking about money, but thinking about, does this fit into the spirit of our open space program? And everything that does gets our typical recommendation of 20%, or, that's just one way to think about it that might help. But I do think we have an opportunity to establish a standard because one doesn't exist. And I think that Breck history would benefit from having that.
Well, one thing that's interesting too, Duke, is that it seems like historically our funding has been specific to a project. So I'm sad to see, I did not realize this till I looked at our packet, that they didn't receive any funding from us because of the way Mini Mine was essentially put on hold, which in my mind de-incentivizes the idea of doing it specific to a project, but rather should be general support. I'm curious what other people think about that though.
Keep scrolling, Tony. That's the operating, but right there is the capital. That will include projects that are kind of out of the scope of open space. But all the projects that are on open space, such as mini mine, and the Arctic Stamp Mill, they're listed out here with the dollar amount associated with the mine stabilization's the other one, for Mountain Pride and the Extension Mill.
Mark, why are those non-open space?
Oh, because some of them aren't on open space properties.
See, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sorry, one other question. Is it that, and I wish I recall this from last year, we potentially fund Breck History and then another donation is made from the general fund? Or is there two separate contributions?
So yes, this is the ask essentially from the town. This will be going to the town council at their retreat on October 14th. So this is the total amount that they're asking for. If open space, if BOSAC decides and recommends that any of, to support any of it, then this amount gets reduced by that amount that we're contributing. But this is a total amount that they'd be requesting. The town basically funds Breck History, both their operations and their capital, not 100%, but let's say 90%.
Okay.
So
So ours is a different pot of money than the town's. We have the funding from us, and the town has funding that it can use.
correct.
Two thoughts. One, to answer your question, I'm not sure if it would go down that way, but to sort of like offer a blanket contribution annually or something like that, I wouldn't want to give up our opportunity to affect and be involved with the decision-making process of what happens. So I think on a case-by-case basis, I feel more comfortable with that. And I don't know that this could happen anytime too soon, but I do think it is worthwhile to come up with a standard percentage contribution rather than sort of like, check the balance and see if we're good with X amount of dollars. And then it's easier to have a conversation in the future about our willingness and to what degree to contribute to whatever project they've got coming up next.
Yeah.
Seems to me that we ought to have some kind of a budget that we think we'd like to provide to Breck History through the year, but then we decide out of that, $100,000, whatever the number is, that this project we would like to fund at $30,000. And we don't necessarily have to fund the whole thing if they don't come to us with projects that we think are appropriate uses of that money. But we would have sort of a notional amount in our plan, our budget for Breck History.
I think what happens, you run the risk of, when expectations are just set, you kind of run the risk of.
They'll price it there.
Well, I don't think they would do that necessarily, but you do kind of, they get really sharp when they don't know whether or not something is going to be funded at all, whether or not they're going to get any kind of support. But I don't think that's this kind of organization. They've been great partners.
Right, exactly.
So
I just think it would help us figure out when we're dealing with purchasing land, for instance, and recommending purchases, that we've sort of notionally set aside some money that we want to be used for Breck History, so that we know when we're getting close, we can sort of follow the money.
Well, I think that's what
Yeah,
Matt said,
and I think
right?
that's what you're after too, right?
Put a specific dollar amount on.
Having
Come
some
up with
framework
something,
for,
right? And of course, like you can always adjust from that, but to help manage the expectation and encourage them to, go find money other places also. Not just say, oh, was that, they'll give it to us or whatever.
maybe just doing it for the actual idea of restoration and upkeep. And I don't know if you get into trouble setting up contracts with a specific vendor every year, if you'd have to go through an RFP process or something like that per se, you know, if you're contracting with them, but I don't know how y'all work with all this money.
I think,
Oh,
sorry,
ahead,
just
Duke.
quickly, I think it's important to remember, council's also going to want BOSAC recommendation on just whether you support the projects independent of funding. Like that's kind of the first step.
I
So
know we did it backwards.
if there are any of these that stand out that you guys have consternation about, I think that we should work that out first and
Okay.
then go to funding.
Ahead of ourselves talking about money. So we will back up.
Well, back to just on the money thing real quick.
And we're out of
One of my favorite meetings that we used to have, and I don't recall us doing it in the last year or so, is we'd have our P&L session where we'd kind of walk through this. So we knew what our expenditures were, and we knew what, you know, our extra monies were for supporting programs like this. And it seems like it's not as robust, or we're just not doing it the same way that we used to.
Like.
It was a Jeff
well,
Kospelitz years, remember? We used to do
Yeah.
like a full P&L
like
breakdown.
the pro forma that we
Yeah.
take through. Yeah, and
I love it.
we intend to bring that next month to
Okay.
you. Sorry, we couldn't have it for this discussion.
It's all an L. We know that.
Yeah, it's all L.
There's no P.
Finance department wanted to get a council approved projection for 5 years, given the state of things.
Right,
And
ebb and
and then that'll inform our pro forma, and then we can put it in the packet and talk about it.
Awesome. Cool. Let's talk about
Start with the
heritage.
project.
I don't know if we need to necessarily go through these one by one unless people would prefer to, or if people just want to.
I'd like to know what you guys think about the organization of the mini mine compressor shop. If
The main reason that was kind of moved out was because of costs, or was that because of the impact on the trail?
It
What's
was-
your recall on that?
That was a year ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how many it
I
was.
know, me too. That's why I'm asking you.
It was cost was a huge factor. B was driving more traffic to French Gulch was something that was, and it was a split council on that as well. It was 3.5 and 3.5, for and against. And so, but I do believe that it was those two main factors. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there was heartburn over investing that much funds into an area that's already seen as overpopulated or over tourist.
Cool. Good review. Thanks, Jay.
me personally, it seems like they're moving forward with a process that hasn't been fully approved, right? Like if it was approved, then okay, let's go up there and organize it and start. But why go up there and make a disturbance and organize material for a project that hasn't been approved?
They did indicate there was some of that material that maybe continuing to deteriorate because of water and that. So I guess that's one reason.
One point. Yeah.
Do we want to just let what's left there just deteriorate and nothing be done with it? I mean, it's kind of an eyesore.
Well, I think my assumption would be they would leave it unless they were to reconstruct some iteration of something.
But they were going to do some protection, like getting it out of the water.
Yes, but I think Tony makes a very good point. Like it's opening a door to something that it seems like it's getting a little bit ahead of itself. But Mark, yeah, that's a good reminder. There is rationale behind it, to your point, Bobby, as well. But I don't know what to think about that. That's a really good point, Tony. What do other people think about that?
Yeah.
I think so. Getting to the sort of what do I would approve of or not. I mean, I like the reason I kind of asked them about how do they choose where and what and all that, and I like that Lorium has like this massive opportunity to not be crowded and easy access and things like that. And whereas mini mine, it puts more people and more disturbance. And like, I think the disturbance is kind of like my biggest problem with some of that stuff, and kind of why I asked about that Arctic access. And I just don't, in my observation, when somebody has accessed a more remote area like that, it's never the same again. And I don't think that that sort of falls into our sort of conservation responsibility. So I think anything that would sort of be a more intrusive project doesn't appeal to me as much. I think Preston is cool. I think Jesse is cool. I like the Lorium, and I like the ability for people to sort of, you know, be there and check it out and know about and enjoy it that way. But Mini Mine, I've ridden that trail, I don't know, 150 times since we had the last conversation, and every time I'm like, no way would I be in support of, you know, somebody rolling a 6-wheeled vehicle up this trail to, you know, go up there and disturb that area. So that's how I feel about that. And I guess on a case by case basis, I don't know if I want to like blanketly support. I think generally I support, you know, all of these things just for the reason that Larry said, which was we have this great opportunity to tell this story. He got to me.
I know. He does that.
Which I agree with, and it kind of struck me, but you know, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and certainly doing it before, you know, going through the proper channels is best way to go.
Matt, what do you think about the Arctic, the mill battery, moving that, relocating that to Jesse? What's your sense about that?
I mean, it seems to me like an appropriate, like, you know, it seems very well thought out about what they do and why and things like that, and like bringing the drill over to B&B and things like that. I think those are really such cool, you know, additions. But certainly, as Jay mentioned, you know, creating more traffic where, you know, there already is a lot, you know, doesn't appeal to me. And as long as, you know, I feel like these like third parties who go do projects in the backcountry or open space, and, you know, maybe there's more of an emphasis on, you know, holding back some money for restoration if necessary. I don't see us holding back our own money that we're giving to somebody to restore it. You know, I don't think that accomplishes, you know, what we're trying to do. But, you know, that one as far as access, just sort of, that's why I was asking those questions. I'm not fully on board with the idea that they're going to go in there and make, you know, 300 trips up and down a, you know, nearly abandoned 2-track, and we're not going to notice it when they're done. I think that's realistic.
Yeah. Well, we could continue to go. Does it make more sense to just go through one by one with these projects? Okay, let's just do that. All right. So thank you, Matt. That was great. We'll just go down the list. Mini Mine Machine Shop. So this is really referring to taking the inventory that Tony and Mark were just speaking to. What do we think? What is everyone else thinking about that one?
I'll do the opposing viewpoint. One, I don't have any problem running machinery up that trail because that trail is just basically remnants from the mines, more than likely anyway. It's not like we're dealing with pristine backcountry when it comes to some of these ones that are really more in our front country. And my take on it is everything they've touched is better after they made their restorations, where we had, you know, just literally piles of junk and wood before. So I would be in support of taking it on. It's a moment in time. That trail isn't a pristine single track. It's just kind of a well-trafficked trail. So I don't have any opposition to that, and I would support Mini Mine in its full. But as far as inventory, I'd support that.
Okay. Bobby, what do you think?
I also support it. I hate to see things deteriorate to the point where it's just nothing left that's historical, hardly. And that's $25,000. It's not that much to do this piece of it that could help prevent it from just disappearing. So I think it's worth doing. Whether we do whether we approve the ghost structure or not, that's not really what this is yet. This is, let's get it inventoried, let's take it out of the water, let's protect it without really building a big structure. So I think that's a worthwhile use of money and history.
Okay. Jay?
Go down the other way.
Oh, go down the other way. Okay. David Rossi, what are you thinking?
I agree with Matt. I think what you and I were up there
Mhm.
a year ago. I don't remember anything either. Was that you?
That was me.
Okay.
That was me.
It's nice. I had a nice time. Um, I think it's kind of the dots where like Matt says, Lorium is this nice, like encapsulated place where you can go, linger, wander around, kind of get an idea of what it used to be. Whereas the kind of the dots on a map in French go like visit this, then visit this, then visit this. You're actually creating a much longer kind of loop for people, and therefore more you could have lots of people going around. I think that was just kind of the stress, because if I'm jumping on things like the Mila Rose Trail proposal because it was the same, it was also putting pressure, I think, to be consistent. I think long term, that's kind of the same. It's the same thing. Now, I can understand, like with what Bobby's saying, I think doing something to maybe try to preserve it. And I don't know if it's interpreted. I think what I'd love to see is for them to come back and not show the big giant ghost structure. Show us what your alternative might be, whether it's anything from just some interpretation and a couple of pieces. I didn't know there was equipment that's buried underneath there. Is that, it sounded like that's what they were saying. Pulling that out and finding something that is smaller, I suppose I could live with, as long as it doesn't impact the trail on the way up, because I don't think we want, I personally wouldn't like a road up there. So that's kind of my thought. So maybe yes, with a little bit more ideas from them on what they would think, but it all will drive traffic. I think that even though there's it's looks like, I don't think it's an eyesore. It's sort of like, wow, what was here? That draws people up as well, and we're not going to stop people from pointing out all the dots on the map. So I guess I've just contradicted myself. So just ignore my entire comment.
What is the answer on yours?
Yes, with an
maybe.
asterisk,
Okay.
or yeah,
I'm gonna write that.
Definite maybe.
I'm a definite
Okay.
maybe. I'm a maybe.
Great.
This business of driving traffic, that's what gets our sales tax, is people coming.
No, I'm not. In no way is this about, discouraging guests from enjoying our trails. I think it's more directing people where they would have a much broader experience without them all being in the B&B parking lot, which does get overstressed.
I
So
know that.
we have such a vast network of trails and areas to go that it would be nice. Like the Arctic Mill makes more sense to me from that standpoint, because that's a little bit easier to get to, and it does have that encapsulated area. The Jesse's already there. If you hadn't, I thought that was a really cool rendering, and it's something that's really different. I struggle with Preston. I'll be honest with you. I struggle when we rebuild cabins like that because they don't look historic any longer. That's just but that's totally subjective. I get why they do it, but it's sort of like, God, that was so cool. But also looking at one step over, I remember 20 years ago, that was
Good
not
shape.
sagging. It was a good shape, and I thought about moving in. So.
Bobby, too, it might be helpful to know, right before you got on BOSEC, we had a fairly extensive conversation during the master plan work about how there's so much pressure on French Gulch. And I think as a group, we felt inclined to try to spread out the congestion because our trail system is so robust and there's areas that aren't nearly as busy. So I think some of us come from that viewpoint of trying to depressurize that area
So a
specifically.
Specific area that you're worried, not just generally
Correct.
driving more.
Yeah,
people to the
it's
traffic.
just
Got it.
more like equitable spreading out of our users. Yeah,
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
yeah, sure. Matt, do you want to add anything on mini mines?
I feel
Okay.
like potentially doing an inventory is the first step, and then we have people sitting across from us who say, well, we did the inventory, so the next step is, and I agree with that. I do believe there will be more impact on the trail than is realistic to think about right now. And I don't think, and I mean, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but maybe some of this stuff just like doesn't need it or it's not the right place or the right time for it. So and that would be at the bottom of my list.
Okay. So would that be a
I'm
no,
saying-
a
I would
no?
say no.
Okay.
If I have to.
Sure, pick one or
Pick
the
one.
other. Okay.
You don't have to, just
Well,
listen to me.
Can I say no and then get myself back to yes?
Nebulous for
I'm
Duke to
using-
determine.
I-
Okay. Okay, Jay.
Thank you. I constantly, and with all these, I have Larry on my shoulder going, hey, we only have this team for a little while. This is a finite amount of time that we have this team. Like, we have to make the most of it. And I think that's really tough because all these projects, I want to say yes to. I want to be like, yeah, go do it, go do it, go do it. In this one in particular, I think it is important to have a second phase that we're all on board with in order to go into first phase. If we're gonna be having a spider crane driving up and down, I'd like to know that we're salvaging all this because we have a plan that next year or the year after that or the year after that, we're going to do what with it? Are we gonna use it for another restoration somewhere else in the town or in the county? Are we going to try to build this ghost structure? Are we waiting until council flips over so that we can rebuild it the way that it was shown last year? And just, or what is it? What is the plan? And I would love to know that step too.
Yeah. Yeah. So would that be a no contingent on perhaps more information?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to get an agreed upon step 2
Yeah.
in order to do step 1.
Yes, Jay, I'm right there with you. That's what I was planning to say is I think and Tony, thank you for illuminating this. I think knowing what the full plan would be, even if it's like, okay, the priority would be potentially rebuilding, some version of a structure, but maybe an alternative is just seeing what's underneath all that pile and reclaiming anything that's worthwhile. But not knowing the full scope of the plan, I don't endorse the inventory. I also just worry that location to me is so unfortunate with the way when you're traveling east down, especially on a mountain bike, if you didn't know there could potentially be a group of people standing looking at a structure, it just seems ripe for a potential accident. I don't know what other people think about that.
Gotta go very slow.
Yes, and if you didn't know,
There's
moving
that
on.
rock and roots that Matt doesn't like, right?
I know what,
Difficult to find.
I agree.
That's our
Good job
speed
picking that
management
up.
program.
Thank you so much.
So Duke, I don't know how you splice that because it sounds like we need more information on the plan.
I mean, what I heard was 3 to 3, and the no's, a couple of the no's wanna agreed upon step 2 before moving forward.
Okay,
Kristen's not-
I know. She hasn't said anything and
I
I
can
think,
relay that to council that both. sides are
okay,
split.
yes, the nuance, great. Are we good with that? Okay. Next up, Arctic Stamp Mill Battery. Who wants to start on that one?
I'm happy to just, one thought on this is that although the price tag is high, I think because the Jesse Mill is not interpretive, like you're not allowed to go to it, you're not allowed to visit it, like you're not allowed to like touch it, play on it, whatever. I think there is a strong desire to have something such as this on the other side of that creek or that river, where it is more interpretive. And so I think this would be pretty heavily supported by me. And I think it kind of aligns with a lot of council's goals as well.
Great. Bobby, we'll just go. if That's all right.
This one looked like it was going to be awfully hard to get done. And there's so many steps that have to, so many hoops to jump through, just the terrain and who owns what. That said, I still think that it is a cool piece of equipment that would be a real enhancement for Jesse. So I would say yes, even though I'm a little worried about just whether it'll happen.
Mhm. Okay. Chris, what are you thinking?
Yes, and supportive.
Great. David?
For Arctic?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And Matt, you expressed some concern about the.
Yes, too. I think it's really cool for a lot of stuff, reasons Jay said. I want to make sure that there's a very solid plan in place to make sure that once it's out of there, that you can't tell what happens. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
Part of our sort of conservation responsibility, even though, both of these things fall into our responsibility bucket. But to me, I would support it, but with the caveat that there's a back end plan that's pretty ironclad.
Okay. I'm a yes as well. The one thought was, it seems like a nice option with a relatively short walk from the Peabody Trailhead for people that it's just more accessible than some other things are. So,
Wintertime too. Be
yeah,
great.
yeah. Okay, next is, I'm forgetting the specifics on the additional mine site stabilization. Was that a general?
It's,
Mountain Pride and then
Now-
Extension Mill.
Got it.
and one step over all lumped together.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So my mistake. Let's do Mountain Pride. Sorry. I didn't realize that was like a sub grouping. Yeah. Who has thoughts on Mountain Pride?
I'm a yes on that one. I like Mountain Pride and I would love to see it protected and improved a bit. I think there's a lot of storytelling that can happen there.
It's under where it says mine site stabilization, Tom,
Okay, thank you.
further down there.
Was at one point the unofficial mayor.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
I'm in support of that one too. I think that with the work that was done in the Lorium and our existing trail system through there, it makes for an amazing experience, especially in the wintertime. I mean, it's such a really nice cross-country loop
Yeah.
with the history.
David's a yes. Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. Jay?
Yes.
Okay. I am also a yes. All right. Extension Mill. Yeah, please, Catherine. Can you use the microphone? Thank you.
Is it on? Yeah, it is on. I was curious about, Larissa kind of presented it as two possible options there where they're either kind of like restoring it to the mining era day, or they're using it to tell this story of more like 60s and 70s add-on and living in the woods kind of experience. And I felt like we should give them feedback if we have a strong feeling one way or another on that. So
Yeah, thank you for that.
I
That-
thought that
thanks
was
for
maybe
that.
just a concept for them to think about.
I took it as their board is
Tina.
discussing this in
Yeah.
PBD. So
Okay.
I think Catherine makes a good point. Like if anybody has feedback on that, we can provide that guidance.
I guess off the top of my head, I would say for the sake of consistency and the overall projects, I would say that sort of that historic restoration would be another way that I guess I would like to see it.
Mhm.
Maybe I was at their board meeting a couple months ago and they discussed this. And it started out with that, but I think it did evolve towards recognizing those additions in that because that's also part of our history, from like the 70s and 80s. And that to just bring them back to what they look like in, 1900 wasn't maybe the goal here. And so I think that's where the Breck history is leaning.
Jeffrey,
You should never go first.
Uh,
That's why I
well,
don't.
Jeffrey had a great story of how one of the folks that used to live in that cabin was not so nice, and they cut his brake line in his car, some of his neighbors. It was, yeah. So there's some history.
Yeah.
Is that the history we're trying to?
No, some
No.
thinks it is actually quite interesting. Yeah.
Which history are?
I don't know.
Well, we've spent some time tearing down a lot of fabric in the French Gulch area because there were people who were unhappy about the history, which I think was unfortunate that we lost a lot of that historic fabric. And they were just torn down indiscriminately and because people were living there. And I wish this approach could have been around to put a stop to that because there were a lot of actually pretty cool places. But on the 70s stuff, it wasn't that long ago this was before Side Door was rerouted. But if you guys remember going up and there was that little A-frame that was, I think it's gone now, but it had a solar panel on it. And I went in there and the light was on, like a little desk light the light was on in there. And it was just like kind of creepy, but kind of cool at the same time. I didn't understand solar power at the time. I was looking for the extension cord. So I kind of like that idea. I don't think there's a lot of that fabric around.
Any other thoughts on that?
No, I don't know if it's our space, but I personally would support it. I think it's all Colorado history.
And it is a different kind of look to some of the other mines. I mean, it does show the progression of the industry and the people. So I think the idea of telling all of the story is pretty cool, even if it becomes more of signage that explains it. But I still think that taking what's there and keeping it and explaining the story is important.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to go back to a golden era.
Sure. Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Bobby and Chris. I think there's something interesting about that more modern history.
Yeah.
So,
I was just kind of thinking about, did you guys have a chance to see was it Breckenridge Rewind?
That's what totally.
That's
Say it.
history, right?
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I've been persuaded.
Okay. Huh?
Okay, great.
It's what you
I
wanted.
appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Extension mill. This is the centrifuge, a Portland filter. Big thing. Thoughts on that one?
So it's mostly.
It's mostly just, yes, it's improving visibility and I think doing the work to interpret the site.
Taking out a few trees doesn't bother me too much.
Okay.
Good.
Good. Jay, thumbs up or up?
Yeah.
Okay. Laurium Mine Mill. Someone Larry talked about at our site visit.
So the pictures that he showed were just they were renderings, right? So it's not really a full restoration. It's just kind of, and really just because I'm fascinated. We look down and there's a lot of rotting wood down there. I'm like,
Yes.
how can we make that one work? But I think the pieces and parts are good. I think we're just kind of going back a couple of decades instead of going back and restoring it, right? Is that kind of the?
Yeah, it looked like minimal amount of work of, standing up some uprights. And it kind of just made me think of where's that approach on something like the mini mine compressor where they're just doing a minimal amount to see an interpretive spot,
Yeah.
where they're at opposite ends of their thought process with that one. But yes, minimal amount of work on the Laurium.
And I think
stamp.
signage is going to be critical there just to explain what it is you're looking at. Right now, you're just looking at a bunch of logs or timbers and nobody really knows what that is. So if they stand up a little bit of it and explain it, I think that's a win.
Anyone else on that one? Matt? Bob?
I think it's cool just because of its location and proximity to those other recent projects, so I think it's a good place for it.
David, thoughts on that one? Did you say?
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Okay. James,
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I'm losing track of,
Yes.
okay. I think I am too. I think it just adds a bit more to that site, which seems worthwhile. Do you have, staff, do you guys have any thoughts on these I should have asked along the way, but any?
I don't have anything additional.
Yeah, I think you guys are on the right track from how
Okay.
feel the same way.
Okay.
Yep.
Last one step over cabin.
In full disclosure, I brought this to Larry because I thought, being up there quite a bit for Mineral Hill and back door and side door, I noticed it, going the wrong way, over the past decade. And thought that it would probably be cheaper to deal with it now than deal with it in a decade. And so, I had mentioned this to him without direction, but just said, hey, is this on your list? And he said it was now.
But
So,
we got there.
yeah, but, so I just think it would be an easier lift now than it will later. With deterioration.
Yeah, it's a good thought. Bobby?
I'm in favor too. Same thought. Let's do it now when it's a little cheaper.
Yeah, I like Larry's quote about 100-year project. They've stood for 100 years and we're at that point, and if we fix them, they're good. It's somebody's problem 100 years from now.
Right.
So yes.
We didn't really see a rendering of what they wanted to do. I think it was just the current photo.
I think that's right, David.
Yeah, what I liked about that, what I like about that cabin is that they took some old growth trees because there's some huge logs on that compared to like where Preston was, it just seems like they're much larger. I guess I'd be curious to see if it's just sort of like standing it up, getting it so it doesn't collapse on itself for a number of years, or if it's putting a brand new roof on it. I don't want to lose and I think one of the things we did a long time ago, maybe in my first incarnation on BOSAC, was we walked up there with Peter. I think you were there. We did a site visit up there one time a long time ago, and I don't remember who it was. It may have been, I'm blanking on the guy's name who did all the interpretive signage. He was
Eric Twitty?
No, it was the guy who went through the San Francisco, anyway.
Bill Fountain?
What's that?
Bill Fountain?
No, well, we don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nevertheless, there was they had talked about the history of the materials that were used, that they were square head nails that would instantly date it back to being, that was a real valuable process. So I guess getting back to my earlier comment that I don't love when you lose that history by creating a cabin that looks like that was just built. So I'd like to try to protect that history, protect the structure, but protect the history. And even if it were the patchwork of corrugated metal on top, just sort of I think that's pretty cool, just to get it so it doesn't look like it's livable and just built, but so we don't lose it any further.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
Yeah. Matt?
Yes, what Dave said.
Yeah, what Dave said. No, David, I totally agree. The roof is what I love about that cabin. Most specifically, it's that hodgepodge of roof materials. So I assume that's what they endeavor to do, but I also echo your earlier concern, just seeing sort of a totally rebuilt cabin. I do kind of question that a bit. Like, I'm not sure, but that's a personal preference. So I think trying to preserve as much of it, which I do believe they try to do. So, maybe underscoring that point. Okay. I think that's all of them. So now we can talk back to our money conversation. Thoughts on how we do that. Project by project, trying to implement some sort of framework that might guide future provisions of money. I would like to hear people's thoughts about money associated to a specific project, because I'm worried I'm missing something with that. To me, that doesn't quite make sense.
Well, I don't, I may have been conversing with Catherine secretly about what the county has done in the past, and it's been project-based versus organizational support. So I think for sure you want to kind of we would want to direct funds because some of these things are not open space related.
Right.
So I kind of like the project
Okay.
based stuff, but I wonder if something like the budgeting for something that doesn't necessarily happen, can it be reallocated?
Yeah.
I think that's
Maybe
fair.
that's more my concern. I just hate seeing, I did not realize they didn't get anything from us because of the way mini mine. That's I think an extenuating circumstance, but still. Okay.
So I think that's something that we could say, if we're comfortable with 100K coming out of our budget, that we want, for example, we want it to go to the stabilization of Mountain Pride, Extension Mill, One Step Over Cabin. If those don't go through, they come in under budget or they don't happen forever, we're also comfortable with those rolling over to the Arctic stamp. And that way it's projects that we're in full support of that have, I think the stabilization projects have more open space connectivity than maybe the Arctic stamp. And so perhaps that's where we want to put as our first priority. But let's just say we're good with it going flowing down to Arctic stamp, that we can kind of set that protocol.
I mean, if something doesn't happen with one of the stabilization projects, like the council says, forget that one, we don't want that.
Yeah, what do people think about that idea?
Yeah, I like that too.
So we'd say yes to 100K for the additional stabilization projects, but it could flow elsewhere if some of those don't happen.
Elsewhere being a specific project.
Right.
But one we had consensus on. So yeah, like you said. Yeah, I think that's a great way to go.
But are we also going to recommend these specific projects?
Yes,
Above the
it's
line
like
that
a
they go-
two-part sort of feedback situation. Yes. How are people feeling about 100K? Just that his,
I mean, that being said, is there an appetite to, throw some more money at things if there's something that is a higher priority or more appealing? Say, well, we'd add on because we're in particular support of some other project, right? We can leave that door open, can't we?
yeah, no, it's a great, do you mean generally speaking,
Generally
like year after
speaking,
year? Yeah, yeah. Like a caveat that,
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm curious to follow suit, which I think is a good precedent with town council. Is there a percent year over year you would aim to increase by?
So pretty much all of our like BTO, BCA, all those are seeing more or less 3% increases in requests. When it comes to personnel and staffing, it's typically budgeted 4.5%, a lot more going in there. I think it'd be probably prudent to table this until next meeting when we start talking financials, of kind of seeing what makes sense and maybe taking a percentage of one of our numbers to use that, will put us in that ballpark to be a guide moving forward.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, Matt.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the general aim, and then the caveat of if
Sure.
the commission's really excited about something, you could deviate.
I have a question about your suggestion about rolling over funds that aren't approved for the stabilization to some of these other projects. But if the other projects are fully funded, why would we need to add more to them? The leftover funds from the stabilization part.
I think typically, you look at if 10% of a project that's supported fully is coming from the county, open space, and then there's X percent coming from grants, there's 100K or so coming from BOSAC, the remainder is the town. So like I said, it's coming from one pot or another. And so if
So we'd be. we'd
if
be
open
given-
space funds it, then the town will spend a little, that much less. So it just kind of flows.
Thank you.
Are we good in consensus on this generally? I like the waiting, Jay, till next meeting. I think that sounds, in terms of determining maybe how we proceed year after year, but. We good? Team?
Sorry.
You too. What do you think, Duke?
I'm
Tony?
trying to understand what the consensus is. We're giving 100K and they're going towards the mine stabilizations and any excess would go towards Arctic Mill.
Yes. Yeah,
So I think we're looking for a process where we have say in which projects are being prioritized with the money that we're providing, and then what the overflow looks like or what the underspend, which I think is going to benefit us too, because we had a similar conversation with the 14ers
Mhm.
donation where we were comfortable giving for this, but not for some of the other things. So there might be some magic in this as far as how we come up with our process of donating to different organizations.
Shouldn't,
Our caveat.
if we're gonna table part of this, shouldn't we table all of it? Just because
What my suggestion was just tabling what our formula will be for moving forward
Yeah.
in the future.
right.
Not,
but it sounds like what you're saying is that you just moved our Arctic Mill, I keep saying Arctic, sorry, to the it sounds like that we were deprioritizing that.
That was just the,
Is what
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just.
way the 100, if I'm wrong, Jay, the way the 100K would be allocated, and it would first and foremost go to these three that we had like great consensus on. And then any leftover would be allocated to the Arctic project.
But they're.
I thought Arctic was one that was all
It
It
was,
was,
but
I think it's more that the stabilization part of what they do
I see.
falls more in line with
Yes.
open space
Okay.
and what we're trying to do. And the other one is more, it's almost like recreational programming to a certain degree. It's restoration, but it's not really in our space.
I want a fair.
Interpretation.
right.
Yeah.
But up there.
It helps us to have a number
Oh,
so we can recommend that to council.
we'd
So
go
they
through
have
this.
that going into their budget retreat. They know what's being contributed and what the recommendations are.
is that enough, Duke?
Yes.
So the question then is, if we had a joint meeting with OSAC, but we wanted to review our pro forma, which I think would bore OSAC, frankly,
Mhm.
and have this conversation, could we do that in December? Or is that too late to review our budget?
I think we could do it then, but we might be able to do it in October.
Oh,
We're
sure.
talking about
Oh, I'm
November
sorry.
as the
It's
joint meeting.
September. Right. Okay, my mistake.
Either way, we could work around the OSAC meeting, I think.
Lost track of the month. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, are we good then on all this? Okay, then we will move into executive session.
be a motion for that.
Oh, I was gonna wait till anyone wanted to leave that didn't want to participate. Sarah, thank you for coming. You're our most devout fan. Okay. All right, so I move that BOSAC go, oh, I'm sorry, you do a new,
We record this part?
right, and then you switch. Okay, sorry, Tony.
It's okay.
I move that BOSAC go into executive session under CRS 24-6-402E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators concerning a property that the town may be interested in acquiring for open space purposes. Those present include Catherine King, Mark Truckee, Jay Beckerman, Bobby Zanka, Chris Tennell, Nikki LaRochelle, David Rossi, Matt Powers, Tony Overlock, Duke Barlow, and Chris Kulik. So now I need a second.
I second.
Okay, and now I need to take a vote. So anyone opposed going into executive session, let me know. Great. Okay. It is September 15th, 2025, and the time is 7:54 PM. For the record, I am the presiding officer, Nikki LaRochelle. As required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. This is an executive session under CRS Section 24-6-402E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategies for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators concerning property that the town may be interested in acquiring. I caution each participant to confine all discussion to the stated purpose of this session and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the session, any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection.
Adopt it.
Now I say that. I move to adjourn our regular meeting.
Second. Oh, we don't have to do that, do we?
No, we do. I
Oh,
think.
okay.
Yeah,
I-
thanks, Bobby.